Okay, so we have pre-flighted this parachute. Before I put it on, I'm making sure that the lower straps are clipped on both sides so that they don't hit the ground. Actually, this one is not, so let me fasten it. Because we don't want this hitting the ground while I'm putting the parachute on. That puts nicks in it, and then that can damage the webbing. So we'll fasten that. And then I'm going to put this on like a jacket, like so. And then once I have it on, now I can take the strap off and just gently let it hang down so it doesn't hit the floor, like so. And then to put the parachute on, I want to start with the left hand strap. I'll explain why in a moment. The left hand strap goes around my leg and through the left hand loop, then cross over and clip. Now I take the right hand strap around my leg, through the right hand loop, then cross over and clip. The reason for that sequence is, notice that there is no way for this strap to cover up my D-ring. My D-ring is my lifesaver. If I have to get out of the airplane, it's pulling this D-ring that's going to activate the parachute. If this thing is covering up the D-ring, that could be a big problem. There's lots of silver things here that I could be tugging on that won't do any good. So this sequence verifies that the D-ring is on top. Alright, so now that we're clipped on both sides and in the correct sequence, I want to take these two tails and tighten these leg straps equally on both sides. Not so tight that I can't stand up, but pretty snug, because if I have to use this thing, I'm going to be dangling in it. I want to be snug. Alright, and again, equal on both sides. Last thing I want is for these loose tails to get tangled up in the airplane and prevent me from getting out. So I want to fold these up, find the elastic retainer here, or keeper, and secure that loose webbing, like so. And in this case, the keeper has slid down here, so I will retrieve it, and there we go. These upper straps are nice and comfortable for me. They're snug but comfortable. If these needed to be loosened up, then we'd have to probably take the parachute off to do that and store the excess up in here. There's a Velcro in here that lets you store the excess. But that is good to go. So let's go out to the airplane and we'll talk about ways to avoid breaking the Great Lakes. As you can see, it's like walking with a sack of potatoes on your butt. We get out to the airplane, the first thing we want to talk about as far as how not to damage the airplane, you notice the non-skid area for stepping. You don't want to step off the non-skid. This is nothing but fabric and there's nothing to support it underneath. So you could do damage if you step here, only here. So when you step up here, a lot of times what can happen is you reach inside the cockpit to adjust the straps or do whatever, and you unconsciously move your foot back. And now, when you stand up, your weight is on that heel, which is off of the non-skid. So you want to be careful to always make sure that your heel, not just the front part of your foot, but your heel is only on the non-skid area. And you also want to keep an eye on your passengers. Never turn your back on your passengers as they're getting in and out of the airplane, because it's very easy for them to inadvertently step off of the non-skid area. Also, on the sides here, this is nothing but fabric and stringers, and these stringers are just thin pieces of wood. If you shine the camera in here, you can see that. These delicate pieces of wood are very easily damaged by putting your knee into the side of the airplane. So there is a step here that you can step on to get in and out of the airplane, but never, never, never put your knees into the side of the airplane. That's an easy way to break the Great Lakes as well. Your shoulder straps should never, ever, ever hang outside of the airplane like this. So leave them only inside the cockpit. When you're getting out of the airplane, especially with a parachute on, it tends to drag those straps out with you. So be very conscious of that when you're getting out of the airplane, that you don't inadvertently drag the straps out with you and have them hanging out. In fact, sometimes it's easier to take the parachute off when you're inside the airplane, and then once you step out, then you can take the parachute out. So let's talk about getting in and out of the airplane. I mentioned we have a step here. We also have a handle right here that you can hold on to. You can also hold on to this. This is safe and secure. The end strut is okay also, but be careful about these fuel lines. You don't want to torque these or put pressure on these fuel lines. So if you choose to hold here, don't grab the fuel lines. So the rear cockpit is the PIC spot, or the solo spot. So let me demonstrate how to get in. Be careful not to grab the windshield. This is not designed for holding pressure or bracing yourself. So I'm gonna grab here, step here with my left foot, stand up, put my right foot right on the seat, which the seat cushions have been taken out since the parachute becomes a seat cushion. Change my grip, put my left foot in, and depending on how fat my butt is, sometimes the parachute can be up here like this. So you gotta kind of wiggle around and get the seat cushion part of the parachute inside. And once you're inside, be careful of the belts. They don't damage the windshield or the clips here. And you can just lower yourself down inside like so. All right, one other thing I want to talk about is this master switch. It's the most forward switch here. That's easy to bump when you're getting in and out of the airplane. So be careful of that as well, so that you don't end up draining the battery because of a master switch being bumped on, and then you leave the airplane with the master on. All right, the last thing I want to talk about as far as how not to break a Great Lakes is the brakes. The reason the brakes are an issue in this airplane, there's two reasons. Number one, the brakes are very, very effective. They're disc brakes and they work. The second reason is all of the fuel is in this main fuel tank up here, 27 gallons worth. That's almost 300 pounds that sits up high. So that gives the airplane a very high center of gravity. So if you get on the brakes aggressively with any speed at all, you're going to end up on your nose or worse, over on your back. So let's talk about how to mitigate that threat. First of all, I don't know if you can see the rudder pedals here. This airplane is equipped not with toe brakes, but heel brakes. That's these brake pedals right here. So this is rudder only, these are brakes. And the way to activate the brakes, you don't ever want to leave the rudder pedal to use the brake. You just want to pivot your heel over so that you can access the brake. So when you're taking off and landing, it's feet clear of the brakes. And you need to check with your passenger to verify feet clear of the brakes. And you need to get a response from your passenger affirming that their feet are clear of the brakes. That is extremely important, because during taxi or during landing, if your passenger activates the brakes, you're going over, and there's nothing you can do about it. So make sure that on literally every single landing approach, do your GUMPS checklist, and then ask the front passenger, are your brakes clear? And get an affirmative answer from them, and then verbalize that your brakes are clear, and that way that manages that threat. So on the landing roll, when you get slow enough that you do need to use the brakes, shift your heels over and just ease the brakes in like this. Never slam them on. Never use aggressive brakes. Otherwise, again, you will end up on your nose. One of the biggest threats that can happen is if ATC calls you up with urgency and says, 04 X-way, hold position. Your natural inclination is going to be to jam on the brakes. Don't do that. If you do that, you're going to be holding position for longer than you expect. And you may even shut down the airport because you're going to be hanging from your straps upside down in the middle of the runway. So no matter what ATC tells you, if you need brakes, just ease them in. Never, never, never jam in the brakes. Let's talk about the parking brakes in this airplane. If you look down here, you've got two buttons, or knobs I should say. You got one on the left side of the seat and you got one on the right side of the seat. These are parking brakes. Why you need a separate parking brake left and right, I don't know, but we never, ever, ever use them. If these were activated in flight, when you land, it is all over with. So make sure that these stay down at all times. Pushed in would be deactivated. So no parking brakes. All right, now we'll talk about how to put on this 5-point harness system, which is a very secure harness system because it's designed for aerobatics and inverted flight. So it starts with the lap belt, and then the left shoulder harness strap, the center strap, and then the right strap. Now, on the lap belt, there's actually 2 straps and 2 fasteners. And normally, this top fastener is designed to be fastened last, which I'll explain why in a moment, but I like to temporarily fasten it first because it holds this whole assembly together. Next, I will reach behind me and grab my left shoulder strap and get it ready. And it goes like this. This padding goes on the bottom, not like this. And actually it's twisted, so I'll straighten it out. And as I put it over my shoulder, it tends to want to fall off of my shoulder. So if I have a parachute on, I want this to be to the inside of where the blue parachute strap is, or padding here. So I'll get that ready to go. I'll also reach behind me and pull the right shoulder strap around and get it ready. Make sure it's not twisted. So these are ready to go. Also, I've got all the slack that I need. And I'll reach down, and I've got plenty of slack in my center strap. So, start with the left shoulder strap. Put it on like this, not like this. It goes on like this to the lap belt. Then next I go to my center strap. Make sure it's not twisted. It goes on next. Lastly, the right shoulder strap, not twisted. It goes on like this. So I've got my 3 straps here. Then I take the lower clip of the lap belt, insert, clip. Notice you can hear that clip. That's what you want to hear. Now the upper clamp or clip, I will unfasten, and I will put it over the top of the 2 shoulder straps. That's why this top one goes on last, is because it goes over the top of the 2 shoulder straps. And that way, to release all 5 harnesses to get out of the airplane quickly, these 2 latches go this way and I'm free. So that's the reason for that. Now that these 2 are clipped and in the proper sequence, I'll start with my lap belt on the left side. Now I've got 2 straps, so I want to tighten these like so. And then I want to take these loose tails, put them through the keeper so they don't hang down and interfere with any of the cables down there. Same thing with this one. And that's reasonably snug. On the right side, we'll do the same thing. But lastly, we have a ratchet here. So the last strap on the lap belt, I use a ratchet. Now if you need to loosen this up on the ratchet, this is spring loaded. Can you see that? And this is also spring loaded. So to get more slack, I may need to depress both of these like so. And it's tricky sometimes. And that way I can get more slack. We'll go ahead and tighten it back up with the ratchet. Now, the lap belt is nice and secure. Next, we'll go to the center strap. And we'll tighten that up, because remember, I might be inverted and hanging from these straps. And about the time you think the straps are tight, when you go inverted, you realize they're not so tight. Lastly, my 2 shoulder straps. And these are the ones I tend to focus on really getting snug, because it makes you one with the airplane. You're not flopping around at all. You can still move around, but you are one with the airplane. Now lastly, the cables for your headset. You want these to actually be underneath, from left to right, all of your straps. So notice how I put my right arm underneath both the parachute and the harness like this, and I grab my headset cord and I pull it inside, and then I plug in on the right side like so. And then I can put my helmet and my headset on. And the reason is, if I need to get out of the airplane, the last thing I want is to take a bunch of time to untangle cords or to get tangled up in cords. This way, all I have to do is literally unplug like this, unfasten my harness, and I go. I take the headset with me. I just leave the helmet on, and I just leave the airplane headset and all. That's the quickest way out of the airplane and the least risk for getting tangled up with cords and so on. All right, so getting out of the airplane, in an emergency, disconnect the cords, unfasten the harness. That releases all 5 harnesses, and now you are free to go. And of course, you're not worried about damaging the airplane. So put your arms out like this, hoist yourself out, stand up on the seat, and leave. So Basically, again, you're not worried about damaging the airplane. Take the headset with you and you're gone. And then of course, in the other video segment, we talked about how to deploy the parachute. Let me talk about getting out of the airplane normally though. So you finish your flight, and you disconnect all your cables, like so. And I think the easiest way to do this is to go ahead and get out of the seatbelt while you're in the airplane. I'm sorry, out of the parachute while you're in the airplane. So we'll undo this clip. We'll undo this clip. Now, what we have to do is take these out of the loop so we can take it around the other side of the leg, reclip it. Same thing here. Take it out of the loop, around the other side of your leg, reclip it so the cables don't hit the ground, and now you can just slip out of it. And now you can get out of the airplane without the parachute. It's a little bit easier. Like so. When you get up like this, right hand here, left foot on the peg, you can grab here. Once your left foot is on the peg, right foot on the non-skid area, and you're freed. Okay, one other thing I want to talk about with the Great Lakes is that the engine tends to run hot on cylinder head temperatures, particularly cylinder number 3 and 4 because they're towards the back of the engine. So on both Great Lakes, there is a checklist Velcro to the left side here. And in addition to the run-up checklist, there is a 1000 AGL checklist. So at 1000 AGL, you need to bring the throttle back to 25 inches, the prop back to 2500 RPM, and then for airspeed, normally you're doing 75. That's the best rate of climb speed until you get to pattern altitude. But once you're at 1000 feet AGL, the checklist calls for accelerating to 85 to 90 miles per hour. That will help to maintain the cylinder head temperatures within range. 415 degrees is max. Ideal is below 400 degrees, though that's very, very difficult in this airplane. The other Great Lakes has an engine monitor. This airplane will soon have an engine monitor so that you can check it. But in the meantime, this procedure will help to keep the cylinder head temperatures from climbing too high.